Days of Fright Horror Movie Project, Year 4.
Welcome to the Two-Ton Nerds. As always, my name is Max James. It's October 19th, 2015, which means it's day 19 of the 31 Days of Fright Horror Movie Project, Year 4, and the movie for today is Exeter. Now, for me to watch this movie, three things had to align. I haven't watched a demon possession movie in a while? Check. The synopsis I read on Netflix? Check. And when you highlight a movie on Netflix, it kind of runs through some pictures, and that's usually what a selling point for me nowadays on Netflix, if it has some pretty decent images when it does that. And that did have some pretty decent images, and that was a check. So these three things aligned, and that's why I ended up watching Exeter. And my initial reaction was, after the whole movie was said and done, it was okay. I thought it was good. It was just okay. It was good. It didn't do anything special, but it did have some great visuals. But before I kind of dive into that, I'm going to tell you what you need to know about this movie. And first up is the plot. The plot of the movie is basically a party in a mental hospital, and the group of friends who are still hanging around after the party is ended. They kind of do some. You've ever seen The Craft, where they do the light as a feather, stiff as a board, and they try to levitate someone? Well, when they do that, they summon a demon or something along the lines of that. And so they're kind of dealing with this because the main character, he has a little brother. That's who they do it to, and he kind of gets freaked out and runs away, and we don't see him for a good while, and he ends up being possessed. And so they're just, throughout the movie, they're just trying to figure out what's going on and try to help his little brother, and through that, chaos ensues. But in the beginning of this movie, we learn that this place is a mental hospital for the unstable and the unfit. So, but as the newsreel kind of gives you more information, we learn that this place is more of a death sentence than a sanctuary for the people who need help, because they run out of room burying people, and so far that they had to buy a crematorium so they could cremate the bodies. So that just tells you that this place racked up a body count even before this movie begins. And this place is a pretty good size, and I really do like the setting of this movie. It's a really cool building. It kind of reminds me of what's it called, the X-Men's mansion. The Xavier's mansion, and it kind of reminds me of that a little bit, because it is kind of surrounded by woods. It's a nice brick building. And if it was upkept and in pristine condition, this place could be really nice. But when brick buildings are kind of good for horror movies, because they do have that creep factor to them. So, and that's basically the plot of the movie, just them trying to figure out what's going on and try to help his brother and deal with anything that gets thrown their way. Now, the plot of this movie was pretty good. I enjoyed it. But there is some major twist in this movie that I will not reveal. But I honestly didn't see the twist coming. It was just like, oh, okay. I was like, whoa, that was pretty cool. And I liked it. But my biggest problem with this movie was how reliant they were on technology. That bothered me a lot, because it was such a cheap way to get information going in this movie. I would rather they kind of did the old school stuff, like they found an old file and read some entries in it, stuff like that, kind of give some general more information. But they relied way too much on the whole being able to look up cell phone looking on the cell phone for information of how to do DIY Exorcist and what symbols mean. It was just too easy for him to look that stuff up. I wanted it to be more old school. I will always take an old book over a phone or an iPad or whatever, and I always like that. I always like when they find like an old book or something like that in horror movies that kind of helps move the plot along, and I thought I liked that. And they just relied too much on technology in this movie, and it bothered me too. And the editing in this movie is This movie has kind of two different kind of editing problems in this movie. It has the first half of the movie is really good. I mean, pre-party was edited really well. It gave you what you needed to know, and then when the problems ended up happening, it was edited pretty well as well. But during the party scenes, I just felt like there was some stuff missing. And I mean, even though during the twist they kind of fill in some gaps, but it was just more editing, cosmetic reasons. Like things kind of bothered me. And it's like there's this particular scene that there's an incident involving a car. They're driving, and you can clearly see that the background's moving. Okay, and then they end up hitting someone, and then after they stop, they kind of have some reaction shots of the characters, and then you can clearly see that the background is still moving. That bothered me a little bit. That bothered me more than anything in this movie was that, because that was, as an editor who likes to edit their own movies and stuff like that, I always look for the little details like that. So, but anyways, I'm going to get into the scare factor. Scare factor's pretty good. It had some decent jump scares more than I didn't jump at all. I'm not just saying that I didn't jump, but it didn't get me at all. The gore, there was actually some pretty decent gore moments in this movie, especially when it was just had some good gore moments. And what else did they have? The acting was actually pretty decent. It didn't turn me away. It wasn't stiff. It was what they had was they did really well. This movie is tonally different. It has two different kind of tones, because there was a moment in this movie where they were kind of discussing what to do with a dead body, and it kind of did a cutaway gag. And so it's like, all right, this is what we're going to do. And it cuts to each person, it's like we're going to chop up this body using a hacksaw. And then we're going to blend their body in the blender. And then we're going to put their bodies in jam jars. And then over the course of time, just start throwing them away. And so no one will notice. And it's like, it kind of cut to each of those process. And it's like, oh, and they're like acting all dramatic and stuff like that. And it's just like, I like that. I really did like that aspect of it. I kind of wish they had more elements of that in this movie. Just kind of cutaway stuff. Because this movie did have a lot of humor in it, especially the one-liners from some of these people. It just... there's just one character in this movie that had my favorite line in this movie. He kind of runs off doing his own thing. And he's just walking down this hallway, and he's just kind of talking to himself. And he gives, I'm not going to give the one line away, but he just kind of, he just says what pretty much anybody would be thinking in that situation, and he delivered it very well, and it was extreme, and it came off very funny, and it worked, and I liked it, and that's my favorite line in the movie. What else is there to say? It was okay movie. It didn't do nothing special, but it did have some great visuals in this movie. It did have some great scenes of visuals, because like when the little brother who is possessed, he does have that really cool possession, back-breaking, in the air kind of possessed kind of look, with stuff kind of floating all the way around that, and the way the camera moved, that looked really cool. And then a fight ensues with one of the possessed friends. They end up getting one of those old fashioned fire extinguishers, the foam ones. And so when they ended up busting it open, and kind of foam is kind of going everywhere, and it's kind of like looks like it's kind of snowing, and with kind of mixed with the blood and the way the makeup was on everyone, it was a great scene. It did add that. I like the foam add that foam added a nice element to the movie, and the makeup. I really liked the makeup for this movie. It reminded me of The Evil Dead, the new one. The blood was very black. It was very demonic looking blood. I mean, I know that's the best way to describe it, because like, and this movie looked amazing. It was shot very well. Just a few editing mistakes here and there. It was mainly during the party scenes, but after that, the editing was pretty even throughout the movie. The twist was great. This movie was just okay. It was decent. I actually liked this movie. So I'm going to go through my rating scale. 1, run-of-the-mill horror. 2, best watch for the group. 3, more than average horror but adds nothing new to the horror genre. 4, helps move the horror genre forward. And 5, being a horror classic. This is far from being a horror classic. It doesn't do anything new for the horror genre. 3, I think, I don't know how I'm going to put it. It's definitely not a 2, because I watched this by myself and I wasn't thinking like, oh, I wish I totally was watching it with such and such person, and like some of the other movies I've watched. And I was like, oh, I totally wish I was watching it with this person. It was just a good horror movie to watch by yourself. And so it's either a 1, more just run-of-the-mill horror, or 2, more than average. It's one of those, a 3, more than average. I don't know. It's kind of tough because it does have more than average horror elements. I say it's a combination of both. It's definitely, you've seen a bunch of this stuff in other demonic possession movies, but as well as that, it's more than average because it does have great visuals. It does have some great one-liners. It doesn't have no really memorable characters, but it's just more than average. But as well as it's very run-of-the-mill, has some stuff you'll recognize from other demonic possession type movies. So that's all I gotta say. I do recommend this movie, at least for one viewing. Just if you're kind of cruising through Netflix and just don't have nothing to watch, I recommend it. Just kind of kill some time, and that's what I did, and I don't regret it. So that's all I gotta say. My name is Max James, and I'm going to go geek out.